There's so much going on, and I don't know where you want to start. Today's, salacious details, some of them with Stormy Daniels. I was saying before in the first hour, David, that I get it. It's salacious. It's this. It's that. But the idea of an affair and paying somebody off to stay quiet is not really. It's not illegal, and it's not really what this case is about. At least at the greatest stakes that represent this case.
Yeah, I just literally moments ago was on MSNBC talking about this. The prosecutors made a decision that they wanted to get all sorts of things out on the record to shape as best they could the cross-examination by Donald Trump's lawyers. They could have chosen to put on a very lean presentation that just stuck to the facts we needed to know, and then, if necessary, rehabilitated Stormy Daniels on redirect. They're the ones who have to make the choices about how they're going to handle these things. I don't think this is reversible error, but an appeals court down the road, if there's a conviction, might see this differently. The most important thing I think to recognize here is Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal are not national heroes. Both of them took money to cover up something that would have been highly relevant at the time. You'll remember that when the Billy Bush tape came out with the incredibly crude and, for a family values party, or at least alleged family values party, total contradiction of their position. A number of Republicans backed off. Jason Chaffetz immediately comes to mind, the congressman from the Rockies. And Donald was able to prevent this from coming out. Had these two women stepped forward, he probably would not be in the White House, have been in the White House. And so they're not heroes for all of this. They took money to be silent. She also, in the morning, it's pretty clear from the transcripts that have been read and cited by journalists who are in the room or in the overflow room, was not a witness under very much control. When they came back at 2:00, her answers shifted to very simple, straight, yes, no, things like that. So clearly the prosecutors had a talk with their witness about all of this. But remember, this case is about falsifying business records to cover up, and the cover-up was intended to corrupt the election in 2016 in the state of New York. And it doesn't matter that Trump had no chance of winning his home state, or for that matter, his home borough or his home voting precinct. That's irrelevant. If you seek corruptly to promote or hold back things, then that's a crime under New York state law. And that's what the case is about.
So in a way, then, on that, the more damning information might have come yesterday when you're talking to the controller, or when you're actually seeing the records then.
Yes.
You at least see the trail, right?
Yeah. I mean, one of the prosecutors have to paint a picture, okay? One of the criticisms a lot of people have had of the serious newspapers in recent years is that and I'm one of the leading critics of this, is that a lot of stories read like bureaucratic memos. They don't have blood and life in them about human beings. And the prosecutors clearly felt that they needed to bring out a lot of material to make this a human interaction. But they also clearly did not make clear to Stormy Daniels that she could derail this whole thing if she goes too far.
And so that's what you saw evidence of. You saw, as you say, a witness who was out of control, as you put it.
Yeah. I mean, having had to testify in various proceedings in my lifetime, you get a long talk from lawyers about do and don't do this and that, and they test you out on what you're going to answer. And I'm somebody who has not been a controllable witness. Both, the grand jury in Los Angeles, where I was forced to testify, because the LA Times wouldn't stand up for its newsroom shamefully, and in a disbarment proceeding that was based on, it turned out to be utter nonsense. And once the questioning of me I realized I was here for no good reason, that was literally made up evidence. I turned to the panel and said, this is absurd and you should be ashamed to be engaged in this procedure. So, I mean, I understand her desire to, I'm going to tell my story, but that can pose a threat to prosecuting this case. As I said, I don't think there's enough here to overturn the case, but you can be sure that Donald Trump will appeal on this grounds. The prosecution might get a benefit out of this because there will be an instruction by the judge when the jury is charged to go into the jury room. And that instruction will probably be very explicit that you're not to pay attention to any of these salacious details which are not relevant. And Mr. Trump disputes them. It doesn't matter if they are true or not. You're to consider them only in the context of what motivated behavior.
And then, David, to the question at hand again, which is that these payoffs and this money for silence was really to cover the political damage that might be done.
Right.
Is the timing of money and communications then relevant? In other words,
very. Very. Stormy Daniels on October 28th, which was a week before the election in 2016, had her lawyer, Davison from Los Angeles, who specialized in representing people who had salacious stories to sell or catch and kill, said this is off because she understood that if she didn't get paid before the election, she would never be paid. And there's been testimony that Trump wanted to delay payment till after the election because if he lost, it didn't matter. And if he won, he could make it go away. And the problem that presents for Donald Trump is part of his defense is this wasn't done for political reasons. This was to save Melania embarrassment. It was to save my marriage to Melania. That just, it's a colorable argument, but I don't think it's going to resonate with most people. But once we know that Trump said, no, we'll just not pay her till afterwards and maybe I can get out of it because Donald's such a cheapskate. It doesn't help him. I've been watching very carefully to see if Donald seems to have any defense we haven't seen. And so far, no. We'll see the cross-examination of Stormy Daniels and how well they do there and whether they can land any punches. But remember, the prosecutors can redirect and try to repair any punches that, legal punches, not physical ones, that Todd Blanche lands on Stormy Daniels.
Let me ask you about literal punches that I think the judge worries the jury may suffer as a result of threats, general though they may be, made on by Donald Trump. Even sort of general sense, the jury is 95% Democrats. He demonizes the jury now in this latest contempt charge and I guess ruling. The judge is sort of, I think, pointing to that particularly, David. So where are we on the contempt stuff? How close to the line, meaning the jail line, do you think we are now getting on this contempt stuff?
Well, the judge could have jailed Donald at the very beginning of this. He's made it very clear in his comments yesterday that he does not want to do that. He's not naive about the fact that Trump is the former and may well be the next president of the United States. Where this is going to come home to roost for Donald, and this is very important to remember. Last night I was shocked the CBS Evening News, which is generally very good, was missing a key word. There have been 10 findings of criminal contempt. This isn't civil, this is criminal contempt. So Donald Trump has been convicted of 10 crimes involving these threatening statements on witnesses, family members of the judge, and other people. It's when if Donald is convicted, it's when the sentencing happens that this is going to come home to roost. As soon as the jury is charged and goes into the jury room, any reason the judge might have to hold off jailing Trump would decline. It wouldn't go away, but it would decline. But the judge in his sentencing absolutely can take into account the recalcitrant behavior of Donald Trump. And this is an ancient idea. This is not something new. People who are accused of a crime, I mean, I've literally seen someone stand up in front of a judge and say, I'm going to keep doing this. Well, you get a much harsher sentence for that. There's a couple I wrote about in the New York Times who were convicted of tax crimes, and they proceeded to tell the judge he didn't have any authority over them and go into a tirade, and they got 8 extra years on a tax charge. Yeah.
Wow.
So this will come home to roost at sentencing, assuming Donald is convicted. And at this point, I think the prosecution has proved the elements of the case, and that the maybe 10 more days of testimony they're going to put on is simply their effort to make sure that they have battened down every hatch as tightly as possible.
David, if he's acquitted, can these various contempt violations still be imposed on him?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Okay. If he's acquitted, the judge can still throw him in the clink. He can't fine him more than $1,000 because there's a limit by the New York statute. But Donald could get 300 days behind bars, 10 days for each one of these offenses. I suspect an appeals court would find that excessive, but a 30-day sentence, yeah, I don't think any appellate judge would find that. I mean, let's remember, in California where you are, and I lived half my life, a hungry man who was a petty thief, stole a slice of pizza from some children down in El Segundo or Redondo Beach, one of the beach towns, because he was hungry, and he was sentenced to life in prison for stealing pizza from teenagers. Oh my God,
that is a Les Miserables kind of truly Victor Hugo.
He did get out, by the way, after some number of years after that.
That's fascinating, though, that even in the situation where there'd be an acquittal, that the penalty can still be applied.
Well, sure, because the penalty is for violating the order of the court. And, Donald keeps saying, and I keep hearing news accounts that report that, he's not being allowed to campaign. He's completely free to campaign. When you are out on bail, the judge could have remanded him to jail pending the trial. When you are out on bail, or even on your own recognizance, you are out subject to the orders of the court. And all the court has said is you can't say things that intimidate witnesses, intimidate jurors, that go after members of the prosecution, law enforcement, their families, my family. He's free to attack the judge. The judge's order allows him to walk out of the courthouse and say, as he said repeatedly, this is a totally corrupt judge, da-da-da-da-da. But you are not a free person when you are out on bail.
I have another Donald J. Trump question, but it's not related to the trial.
Yeah.
It comes in from a viewer listener. I have a question for David K. Johnston regarding the recent DJT stock price, quote, fluctuation.
Yeah.
I wonder whether the DJT stock price is not being manipulated by a pump and dump scheme. Again, not being manipulated by a pump and dump scheme, but rather by an illegal stock price manipulation method known as wash trading. Okay, this is really quite an informed. Yeah. It's a specific form in which a group of stock owners, in other words, Donald J. Trump and others in league with him, artificially inflate the stock price by trading the shares among themselves repeatedly, thereby making it seem like there's a lot of activity in this stock. What about David's comments?
So
Scott in Eugene, Oregon. Thank you, Scott. Go ahead.
No, Scott, thank you very much for that. Most of us think of the stock market as you buy shares at whatever the current price is, and you sell them at whatever the price is when you want to sell. That's absolutely accurate, but it misses all of the ways that Wall Street has figured out how to manipulate stock markets. And first of all, we know that there are a lot of people who sold short. That is, they borrowed shares, which are almost impossible to get now to borrow, sold them, and they're going to make their money when you close out and the stock price has fallen to near zero. So if you bought at the peak of $78 and change, when the price gets down to $2, as I expect it will someday, or $1, and you sell, you make $78 minus the $2 less your transaction costs. You can make money going up or going down. If you have a group of people, Trump could not legally be involved in this, and nobody else, I think, would be involved with him. But if you have a group of people who have an interest in keeping the stock price high, they will trade back and forth to each other. Now, there's a 14-day wash rule. At least the last time I looked, it was 14 days. If you make a trade between now and then, the pricing is disregarded by the government. But it's absolutely a manipulation. All trades are recorded, every single trade that's made, and the SEC can get the trading tape on that. And when this is all over, do I think that there will be civil and possibly criminal charges brought? Yeah, I think there's a very high likelihood of that, because Donald Trump's company last year had revenue, it's claimed. And I say claimed because the auditors in the related company have now been found to have just made up numbers for a whole bunch of companies. They just flat out made stuff up. Gee, sort of like Donald. So they say the company took in $4.1 million and that it lost $58 million. Well, that's not a viable company. Why would it have billions of dollars in valuation? And if you think, well, after Donald gets back to the White House, it's a speculative bet. If he gets back, it'll be worth a lot of money. Why would it be worth a lot of money after he gets back to the White House? It would be worth a lot of money because of advertising or paying fees. And that's a business that for everybody is just gone to hell in a handbasket. You know, Vanity Fair arrived today at my house. It's usually several hundred pages. It's pretty thin.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's happening to all the legacy media. But let me ask you, or at least push back on that and ask, or probe on that and ask, David, doesn't Uber and a lot of these startups that have taken over the world, didn't they operate at a loss for a long time?
Sure. But they also had revenue streams, and you could see the revenue stream. And no, it's not unusual for a startup company to lose money. That no question about that. But $4.1 million of revenue for a business that's been around for a while, Truth Social didn't start January 1st, it's bupkis. I mean, the little two-bed hotel company my son and I had, management company. We didn't own the hotel, we managed it. It was half that revenue, and I'm no billionaire.
I remember actually, I was going to run this for you, but Barry Diller was on CNBC. Yeah. He's, of course, the media mogul, and he's, made a fortune several times over.
Brilliant businessman.
Yeah, brilliant businessman, exactly. And Barry was asked about Truth Social and DJT, and he laughed and he said, "Please, it's not a company. He said, I don't know what it is. He said it's a Ponzi scheme or something. He said, I won't even comment on it. It's utterly absurd." So he shares, I guess, what any informed investor has as a perspective on this. The last thing,
just to make clear, so your viewer in Eugene is right on that there's a very high likelihood that there is some manipulation going on here among people who have an interest in keeping the company stock going for a while, and who likely are also short, so that when the company eventually collapses, they will cash out and make money. Donald cannot himself short the stock because he's the majority owner and an executive. And executives, officers of the company are not allowed to short their own stock. But that doesn't mean he hasn't hypothecated that stock, that is, pledged that stock to some loan that would be wiped out because of short sales by the lenders.
There's several emails. I won't go through all of them, but they kind of follow up on that. One suggests that Trump will cash out maybe at a much lower valuation on September 23rd, I think the viewer notes, when his cooling off period ends. Will there still be money in that piggy bank at that point, David? How does that work?
If you assume that the price is propped up and there's not that much trading volume, so it wouldn't be hard for a conspiracy of traders to do this. The minute Donald sells, he will be required to disclose that under the SEC rules. And that's when a founder sells lots of shares, stock prices collapse, because everybody understands that means get out now. So I'd be very surprised if Donald sells any shares before November 5th. But November 6th, actually November 5th, because no one would know probably till the next day.
I mean, you've got to think that most people are going to clear out in September or October.
Yeah. And we don't know how many holders there are. They will have to disclose that at some point, but we don't know. It could be Donald owns 58% roughly of the stock. So we don't know how many other holders there are, but it's not tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people in all likelihood.
And this is more than just minutia about Trump and stock. As you know, Trump has legit liabilities from a financial standpoint, and it's thought that this media empire that he's part of is going to bail him out in part. But you have mentioned that there, I believe you said, was it the SEC or the FTC would likely have questions around this company, and you sort of alluded to it here.
The SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, they're the Wall Street
SEC.
cops. Yeah, the Federal Trade Commissioner, the monopoly cops, the IRS are the tax cops.
And as you say, they shut down the auditor, right? Because it was a sham.
Yeah,
and,
I think 1,500 companies who they corruptly put forth their audit statements. I mean, we're not talking about some little two-bit operation, even if they were two-bit companies. 1,500 companies.
So it's fascinating. And it's also fascinating how many listeners and viewers had questions about it. So thank you for addressing it. So you actually handicapped this entire thing with the trial of Donald Trump in a way that is different than others who have passed through. Like, in other words, you think that there really may be a case here, even though it's an appealable case, you think that Trump could actually be found guilty on these counts?
On which counts are we talking about?
On the count on the Federal Election Commission violation accounts, yes or no?
I'm sorry.
Oh, on the felony. On
the trial in New York right now.
On the trial in New York. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that it's highly likely Donald will be convicted. Remember that this jury includes two lawyers. We don't know what area of law they practice, but they understand the law, or should. And this is not the poorly educated who Donald can, pull the wool over their eyes. All of the jurors have solid educations based on voir dire, the process of questioning jurors before they're chosen. And that does not help Donald Trump, who would benefit from having a jury of, people who dropped out in 8th grade, or as he likes to say, I love the poorly educated. Yeah, because they don't understand what he's doing to them, that he's not their friend.
Sure, they live on the messaging. They don't live on the actual.
Right. Yeah.
Now,
no, I'd be surprised if he's not. I mean, he has no hope of being acquitted. His hope is that somebody will give him a hung jury. And of course, he will spin that as, you see, there was no case at all. It was all political. It was all political. Joe Biden did this. Never mind that the district attorney in Manhattan is elected, that it's a state system, has nothing to do with the federal system at all. And the poorly educated will eat that up.
The last thing I'll hit you with, and then I'll let you go because I know your dance card is full right now. And thank you again for your time, David K. Johnston. This from a couple of listeners and viewers as well. Talk of the Social Security Trust Fund. This is far afield from the world of Donald Trump, although. Yeah.
I just did the cover story for the April issue of Kiplinger Retirement Report, and it's on Social Security. And I believe that it's currently available free online. So if you put in my name, Kip, in quotes, David C-A-Y, Johnston with a T, end quote, Kiplinger Retirement, it may come up. And
Tony, we can find it and put a hot link in for both.
That would be great if it is available.
We'll take care of that. Yeah.
And here's the reality about Social Security. Because so many more people have jobs, we've had more jobs created in Joe Biden's first term, only 3 and a little bit into the 4 years, than every Republican president since World War II. I mean, that's an astonishing accomplishment. Thank you. Now it's up on your screen.
Yeah, we'll have a hot link. Go ahead.
So many more people are working and therefore paying taxes into the Social Security system, as I continue to do, even though I'm collecting Social Security, that the period in which the trust fund will be depleted has been extended by a year, from 2034 to 2035. I point out in this piece that if we had stuck to the Reagan administration plan to tax 90% of wages, the system would be in surplus right now. And if we adopted the Medicare practice that you're taxed on 100% of your earned income, your salary, bonus, stock options, all your earned income, we could increase Social Security benefits by about 1/5 if it was evenly spread, and if it was just weighted to the lower end, many people are getting by on $1,000. All they have is Social Security, and they get maybe $1,000 a month. They could be getting maybe $1,500 a month. But we instead have allowed the share of compensation for services. That's what the government calls your salary and bonus and whatnot. We've allowed that to come down to about 82% instead of 90%. So the only reason that Social Security's trust fund is coming down is because we're not fully taxing people as Ronald Reagan promised that we would do, and Alan Greenspan, the head of his commission, recommended that we do. And let me just point out that the building up of the Social Security trust fund robbed people of the opportunity to save for the future. In the peak year of over collection, and that's what they've been doing, over collecting Social Security, the decline in personal savings almost exactly equals the excess tax that was collected. This should always have been a pay-as-you-go system. There's no reason it can't continue to be a pay-as-you-go system, but you have to set the maximum level at which you impose the tax at a higher rate. Now, Joe Biden has complicated this because he won't sign anything that would raise taxes on people making less than $400,000. The maximum Social Security wage subject to tax this year is around $170,000. So you'd have to create a donut hole. So you don't pay from 170 to 400 and then you pick it up again. But we have hundreds of people now who make more than $1 million a week, hundreds of them. And if they were paying full Social Security tax, if we have 55,000 households that make over 10 million a year, their average, this is that they have to report. They actually make much more, but what they have to report in their tax returns, and their average is north of $30 million a year. And if we taxed all compensation for services, Social Security would be so flush with money. We wouldn't have all these poor people who become a burden on county taxpayers. And there is no escaping the costs of old age unless you want to euthanize old people. You want to take the Kristi Noem approach. You live too long, so let's take you to the gravel
drag you out to the gravel pit.
Yeah. So we simply, the zeal to lower taxes on people at the top in order to win their political favor. This all traces back to Watergate, to the mistakes made after Watergate in changing campaign finance, which make senators and congresspeople dependent not on you and me as voters, but on their campaign donors. That's their real constituency. And this is a real underlying systematic problem that has gone on.
So if nothing changes, David K. Johnston, because Biden himself points to, I think there should be taxes on billionaires. That would do it. In other words, there's always, there are these ways to increase revenue. But if nothing changes,
we used to tax people who were very wealthy, and we effectively limited their incomes and corporate profits with high taxes. And here's the benefit to that. It's not that the government gets the money, because it doesn't. If you own, a manufacturing business and you got 1,000 employees, and I come in as your finance guy the day after Christmas and say, we're going to earn an extra $1 million this year and have to pay taxes on it, you're going to say, oh, well, tell you what, we'll pay a dividend to all of us who are owners, or hey, sign contracts right now to fix assembly line 3. That'll soak up half the money. And we're in accrual accounting, so we didn't have to pay it right now. We just have to be obligated for it. And you reinvest in the business. And when you reinvest in the business, you are on a macro scale for every business creating jobs, maybe not your particular business, but overall. And when you start withdrawing money so that you can have a 500-foot yacht that requires a 300-foot yacht to service it, now you're destroying jobs. And we need to get back to understanding that the economics of taxes can make us all wealthier if the system is designed to promote private wealth creation and reinvestment in businesses.
Just seems as though it is such a fading strategy, for the reasons that you've articulated, David K. Johnston, because of the donor ownership of legislators. But we're out of time. I so appreciate you stopping through. We will link to that article on Social Security that David has authored. There'll be a link underneath this show and also underneath this video, which we will break out separately so you can find it there and read more about Social Security.
If you're my age, there's surprisingly good stuff in there about money, how to run your life, how to enjoy your later years in that newsletter, which is edited by my best friend. That's why it's become so good.
Terrific.
He's really, really good.
I love it. I look forward to getting into it. David, we so enjoy our time with you. David K. Johnston, everybody. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.